Picture this: 40 years of experience in plastic surgery, med spa, and anti-aging practices, and then an unexpected twist. 5 years ago, Dr. Dominic Brandy confronted a personal health challenge: multiple myeloma, a blood cancer. How does one respond when mortality stares you in the face? We all know we're going to die, but when it's right there in front of your face, it's a lot different, Dr. Brandy reflects. Join us as Dominic shares his unique perspective shaped by a lifetime of studying diet, exercise, and supplements. His ongoing project, Natural Insights into Cancer, expands knowledge from his extensive research into natural approaches to combat cancer. Having directed the Skin Center's anti-aging division for 25 years, Dr. Brandy brings a solid foundation of health and nutrition knowledge. Today, we're privileged to tap into the passion that has driven him since he was 10 years old. Get ready to get insights from a medical professional deeply passionate about health, nutrition, and fighting cancer naturally. Dr. Brandy shares his expertise through his website, social media platforms, visual consultations, and even 24/7 cancer coaching. Stay tuned as we explore the science-supported wisdom within his exceptional book called Beat Back Cancer Naturally, unveiling 5 natural and plant-based strategies to prevent, survive, and thrive with cancer. I'm thrilled to introduce you to this remarkable guest, Dr. Dominic Brandy. You are listening to Health, Happiness, and Planet podcast, where we explore different ways to boost our well-being, live a more fulfilling life, and protect our planet. Join me as I chat with inspiring people and professionals from all over the world, uncovering strategies for improving our lifestyles and nurturing our precious planet. I am Juan, and this podcast is proudly brought to you by Wave Business Excellence Footprint, my digital training company that cares about your career and personal development. I am passionate about making the world a better place, so if you share my enthusiasm, this show is for you. Together, we can steer towards a healthier, happier life while leaving a positive footprint on our beautiful Earth. Join me as we explore how being healthy, happy, and caring for our planet are all connected. Hello, Dr. Brandy, and welcome to the Health, Happiness, and Planet podcast. It's so great to have you here.
It's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, me too. And today it's going to be a very important topic that we're going to cover, because I know that there are a lot of people who either did not get cancer and are really scared of it, because usually when I ask people, what are you scared about? And usually they speak about cancer, and they just think that there's nothing that we can do about it, that we're just being a victim if we do get it. So a lot of people are just living in the hope that they will not get it, but they do not know that there are specific things that we can change in our lifestyle, in the habits that we have, in order to increase the chances that we do not get it. And for those who do get it, then at least they know that there are also other options in order to boost their journey to health. So thank you so much for taking the time today. Tell us your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, a little background about myself. I had a plastic surgery / med spa anti-aging center for 44 years. So I've always been interested in health and nutrition. That's why I always had an anti-aging division. We did stem cell treatments, different type of aging testing, antioxidant testing, and so forth. So it's always been an interest of mine, and I've read probably well over 300 books on health and nutrition in my career. And in September of 2017, my wife and I were on a Viking cruise. It was a 2-week cruise, and anytime I go on a vacation, I always read a health and nutrition book. So I went on Kindle and I looked around and I saw a book called How Not to Die by Michael Greger. And for any of your listeners who ever have seen the hardback, it's literally about 2 inches thick, and about 1 inch of it are scientific references. So I started reading this book on the cruise, and I'm about 3 days into this, and what the science was showing over and over again was that when you look at cultures and research cohort groups that ate more plant-based, they had lower incidence of cancer, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, dementia, Alzheimer's, etc., all-cause mortality. So on this cruise, I tell my wife 3 days in, I'm going to start eating whole food plant-based. And she thought I was out of my mind, with all these desserts and meat and eggs and everything else. So since that time, I've been eating whole food plant-based. But what's interesting is that when I came home, it was the week after we came home from the vacation, I was in the middle of a surgery and I felt a little pop in my right shoulder. And I didn't think a whole lot of it, but it kept getting worse and worse. And then I remember at the end of October, it was actually starting to keep me up at night. And I remember vividly telling my wife, I said, you know what, Trina, I think I have bone cancer. And she said, oh, you're the healthiest person I know. And I kind of shrugged it off, but it was kind of crazy. 2 weeks after that, we're watching television and I accidentally knocked over a container of water. I lunged for it. My collarbone just cracked right in half. So obviously that was quite an eye-opener. We went to the urgent care center, got an x-ray. It was completely displaced. Went to a friend of mine who was an orthopedic surgeon. He looked at it. And I could tell he was concerned that it would just crack like that and without any trauma. So he ordered an MRI. He called me Friday, which was the Sunday after this happened. And he goes, hey, my nickname's Nick. He said, Nick, I have some bad news for you. There's either multiple myeloma or you have metastasis from some kind of a tumor. And, put it mildly, I was totally blown away. I mean, here I was, I had a full-blown practice. Actually, it's the 6th largest med spa in the United States. That's where we were ranked number 6 by Allergan, the company that makes Botox. So all of a sudden, you're faced with this. And I went to the oncologist, and they ran all these tests. They came up with this diagnosis of IgA kappa multiple myeloma. And for your listeners, there's 3 different types of myeloma. There's IgA, IgM, and IgG. And IgA, if you go on the internet, that's the most aggressive. And that's the kind that I had. So my oncologist wanted to put me on a triple regimen. It was 2 oral medications and then another drug called Velcade, which I would have to go into the hospital and get an injection every 2 weeks. And the more I was reading about Velcade, just about everyone that gets Velcade gets a pretty bad neuropathy. In fact, I coach a lot of cancer patients that get this Velcade. I have one in particular. I mean, this guy right now, he's on morphine because it's so painful, the neuropathy. So after doing this research and being a surgeon, I really didn't want my nerves to be affected. So I rejected the Velcade. And the oncologist was super upset. He didn't think I was going to get into a remission without doing the Velcade. But I had been doing plant-based for 2 months already.
Yeah.
And with the knowledge that I had, I was certain that it was going to help me. And then I went into a deep dive into the scientific literature. I wanted to know every single thing that I could do from a supplement, lifestyle change perspective so that I could get into a remission. So every month, I was just taking these 2 oral medications. And every month, my numbers just kept getting in better. And by the 6th month, I was in a complete remission. Wow. And I've been that way ever since. And my doctor was totally blown away. I mean, he didn't even think I was going to get into a remission, let alone do it in 6 months. So I'm like over 6 years, I've been in a complete remission. Actually, I'm at the point where I'm actually weaning off the medication because multiple myeloma is an incurable blood cancer. It's one of the ones they really can't cure. So you are on medication. So the 2 oral medications that I was on at the beginning, I'm on a very small dose. I started, for instance, with a 25 milligrams. I'm on a 10 milligrams. But for instance, this month, I'm only taking it 11 days out of the month. When I started, it was 21 days. And all my numbers completely hold. In fact, he wanted to take me off medication completely because he literally looked me in the eye and he said, you don't have myeloma. He goes, I promise you, you're not going to die of myeloma. And I'm a physician, and I don't think I would ever tell a patient, promise a patient that. But I said, Doc, hey, how about if we just wean me off? I think I'd feel more comfortable with that. So that's what we've been doing. In fact, what's really weird is my numbers have actually been getting better as I've been weaning off the medication, which is, he really can't explain that, but it's kind of strange that the numbers are actually getting better as I'm weaning off the meds. But really, the whole thing with eating a whole food plant-based diet, following some of the basic precepts that I write about in my book, daily exercise, I think is really super, super critical. Getting adequate sleep, think that's something that really have to strive for. And there's a lot of different things you can do to help that, stress management. And the things I didn't focus on my book that I do think are important, I really didn't get into detoxing, for example, and kind of staying away from a lot of the elements that really create a lot of toxins in our bloodstream. So when you're fighting cancer, you don't want to be dealing with all kind of pesticides and so forth. So I'm actually writing an addition to my book, and there'll be a whole chapter on ways to eliminate toxins. For instance, I don't think anybody should ever drink tap water. I don't know what it's like in Spain, but years ago, I always tell this story. My mother had leukemia when she got diagnosed when she was 54 years old. This was like 30 years ago. And we were doing everything to try to help her live as long as possible. And I remember we had a water filtration company come in, and they put 2 electrodes in the tap water. And about 33% of the water precipitated out, which really, to this day, it left an indelible mark on my mind. And then after that, I wrote a letter to the water authority in Pittsburgh, and I said, hey, could I have a list of what the heck's in the water? And they didn't send it to me initially. Then I had to write another letter, and they finally sent it to me. And it was literally like 3 pages, 2 columns on each page of all these different, like arsenic and different kind of oral contraceptives. And I mean, you just can't believe what's in the tap water.
Amazing.
So one of the things I always tell my cancer patients is get a really good filtration. If you can get reverse osmosis on your tap, because you don't want to be cooking with it. You don't want to be, definitely don't want to be drinking it. Yeah. So I would say that's probably one of the most important things. And if you can eat organic, I do think that's important. But on the other end of it, I do think that detoxifying is really important. Like one of the things my wife and I started doing, we bought one of these portable far infrared saunas. So every night we watch a TV show. She gets in for 30 minutes. And then we kind of pause it. She takes a shower. Then I get in for 30 minutes.
Fantastic.
And sweating is something that really is something you really need to do at least 3 or 4 times a week. And a lot of the studies right now are showing that sauna has a remarkable effect on mortality. I mean, some of the studies, if you look at some of the meta-analysis that have been done, I mean, it decreases premature mortality by 18%. That's pretty damn dramatic.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and so the other way you can sweat is obviously by exercising every day. So I always encourage my patients to, when they're exercising, try to get short of breath, and if they can, break a sweat. Drinking high quality, purified water. I do a daily green juice every day. Suja or Evolution, they make a really good green juice. I make a point to do that every day. So that's the way you get rid of toxins through your kidneys. And then the other way is by upping your fiber. So that's just through the elimination through the feces. And if you're eating whole food plant-based, I mean, you're going to be getting, I've analyzed my fiber intake. I'm getting anywhere from 60 to 70 grams of fiber per day. I mean, easily.
More than any
and most
average.
People, I don't know what it's like in Spain, but in the United States, only 3% of the population is even getting 25 grams, which is really, really pretty pathetic. Like I do a lot of weight loss counseling for patients, and one of the things I really focus on is fiber, because we really need to get the gut microbiome in good shape, because that really affects your metabolism in an incredible way. But I get these food journals back, and these people say they eat clean, and I'm like looking at this, and I'm like, I had a lady the other day, like for breakfast, she had a croissant, a turkey sausage, egg and cheese, and I told her, man, you really need to clean this up, because you're way off base. But it's amazing how people a lot of times say they eat healthy, and then when you start looking at their food journals, it's just totally off base.
Yeah. And it's also very surprising for people to realize how many toxins we actually ingest every single day, either through food or through things that we put on our skin and all what's around us. It could be perhaps the carpets that we have at home. It could be the sofa we're sitting on. It could be the creams we're putting on our face or the hair gel. Right. So many things, the deodorant we're using. thing. A lot of people, they don't even think about it. They think, oh, toxins is only if I don't wash my vegetables that have the pesticides on it.
No.
I'm like, no, that's just one little piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I actually developed a toxin-free skincare line that I have on my website.
Okay.
And most people don't realize by the time a woman leaves the house in the morning, the average woman, at least in the United States, has already applied 168 different chemicals to her skin and her hair.
Wow.
In a man, it's about 85. So, and those chemicals can penetrate through the skin and get into the bloodstream. So that's why I developed this. Obviously, I had a, plastic surgery, med spa, anti-aging center, some kind of an expert on skin. Yeah. So this was something that a lot of my patients were asking for. So I developed a line that's really excellent. I mean, my wife's addicted to it. So it's awesome.
I'll be putting that into our show notes so our listeners can also click on that. And the first thing that I actually realized, that was maybe about 15 years ago, that when I started doing those minimal changes to my lifestyle, the first thing I think was deodorant, when I saw the amount of aluminum that I was putting under my arm every single day. Right. And that was like the first thing. I was like, how can it be that there's a product out there in the market that I thought it was going to be safe because it's on the shelf and it's really not safe for me? So that was a time when I started changing my mindset to say, well, let me question every single product that I'm buying to see if it's really safe or not. And to my surprise, it's quite a lot of products out there that you really have to watch out. And you, as a consumer, you really have to be aware about the things you buy and how they produce the product, what does it contain, and also what happens with your health when you're applying it onto your skin or ingesting it. So this is, I think,
a good website for your listeners is ewg.org. I don't know if you're familiar with it. In fact, when I was developing my skin line, you can plug in any ingredient and it'll give you like a score, anywhere from 1 to 10.
Wow.
So everything in my products are a 3 or less. Almost all of them are scored a 1, which is the least toxic. 10 is the most toxic. But if they go on there, they really give you a lot of information on different toxins and so forth. So it's called ewg.org. They might want to check that out.
Perfect. Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that story on how it all started from your side, where you went more into that direction in helping others with their journey and also to heal cancer. And I was just taking a look at the Anti-Cancerize yourself that you have, quite simple, right. A couple of steps where one can go through to see if I can tick on the box, and I have it all in check. And the first one that you have there is to follow the daily dozen. And I know that there's also the flip side, there's also the dirty dozen, so at least we can avoid.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's ewg.org, the dirty dozen. That's where that came from.
True. And so could you tell us a little bit more about the daily dozen?
Well, Dr. Greger developed that. It's an app you can go on and on the App Store and you can get it. But it really helps people that are eating whole food, plant-based, to make sure they're getting a good variety of different plant foods. So you just kind of check off the boxes as you go. The only one that I have trouble with is like 3 bean servings a day. Look, I do 1 every day, but trying to get 3 in there can get pretty tough. But it's a good way to kind of keep you on track.
Exactly.
One of the things I do encourage people to do, I don't know if you're familiar with the American Gut Project. It's one of the largest research projects looking at the gut microbiome. Dr. Robert Knight is one of the premier experts on the gut microbiome. He's the one that spearheads it. But they've already analyzed over 15,000 stool samples. I think people send in $100. They have to answer these very detailed questionnaires. And then they obviously look at all this and they come up with research data. And what they've found is people that eat 30 different plant foods per week have by far the healthiest, most diverse gut microbiome. Wow. Those that eat 10 or less different plant foods have the least healthy, and they have a lot of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, probably because they're eating meat. So what I encourage my cancer patients that I coach to do, and it really sounds worse than it is. I warn them right up front. It's not 30 servings. It's 30 different plant foods. Yeah. And then I actually show them a photo of my daily salad that my wife and I make. We basically prep it on the weekend and we put them into mason jars, which I always encourage my patients to do because it's there. It's for refrigerating. You can just pop it out and you got your salad. But I show it to them and then I ask them, how many vegetables do you think I have in there? And most of them think, there's 15, there's 25 different vegetables in
Wow.
there. So, like, a couple broccoli, a couple cauliflower, there's some beans, some corn, some
Yeah.
onions. So what I told him is right there, you're up to 25. And then if you go on, for instance, the Blue Zone's Kitchen, they have a great cookbook. And there's actually about 10 different cookbooks that I recommend to my patients to kind of look at. A lot of Instagram sites that have amazing vegan chefs. But I recommend maybe learning some really good soups. Those soups will have like 15 different vegetables in there.
Amazing.
So you have a salad, you have a soup, you're already up to 35.
Yeah.
So it's really not that hard to get 30 different plant foods per week.
That's true.
When you tell people servings, it kind of freaks them out. But if you say different plant foods. But what's one of the interesting things about eating whole food plant-based, and I'm sure you've experienced this and maybe some of your guests also, and when I bring this up to patients, they think their diet's going to be very limited. But actually, our diet is more diverse than it's ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, it was always like a piece of meat, and you throw some a vegetable on there, maybe a salad or something. But my wife has become an amazing vegan chef. And I mean, there's foods like a dragon fruit. I never had a dragon fruit before. I never even knew what the hell a jackfruit was. But the diversity in our diet is so much more pleasant. I mean, we're always, looking for new recipes. And if you go on Instagram, there are some incredible plant-based chefs.
Yeah.
There's one we like to follow, Cooking for Peanuts. I mean, she is so creative, and she comes up with some really amazing recipes. In fact, on my Instagram site, my Instagram, by the way, is Cancer Veggie Doc. That's my Instagram site. And I have over 98,000 followers at this point. But I do 2 educational videos every week, and I do 2 recipes. I basically look for good vegan chefs. Yeah. And then I repost their recipes. Because when you tell people to eat plant-based, they think you're eating like carrots and lettuce all day. They think you're like a rabbit.
Yeah.
But when I put those on there, I mean, people are amazed at some of these recipes. There was one I just posted last week. It was a vegan quesadilla. I would put that quesadilla up against any regular quesadilla. I mean, it was amazing. But I think that's one of the things that people need to realize is that when you eat plant-based, your diet actually gets more diverse.
That's right.
And it really fulfills your life more, I find. And you end up being so much more healthy. I mean, it's just incredible. The energy levels that you have, you feel so much better, your mood's better. And a lot of that is related to the gut microbiome.
Time for a quick break to mention that the sponsor of this podcast is Wave Business Excellence Footprint, a digital training company deeply committed to your career development, personal growth, and the well-being of our precious planet. Dive into a wealth of knowledge with over 20 courses available on our website, www.wave-bef.com. Tailored for both managers and employees aspiring to become tomorrow's leaders. One of our best-selling courses is the Presentation and Communication Skills Training, perfect for those creating and delivering presentations in their companies. Whether through video conference or live meetings, if you want to convey your message effectively and do an outstanding job, this course equips you with the skills to be a better creator and presenter. Check out the testimonials on our website. The results speak for themselves. During my time in the corporate world, I often wished I had the opportunity to access such courses at the beginning, making my learning experience quicker. And now, one further topic before we jump back to the conversation. For those of you resonating with the themes of health, happiness, and planet, discover information about our 3-day retreat in Spain by reaching out to my team at the email address hhp@wave-bef.com. You will obtain further information about our life-changing retreat held once a year, together with some of our remarkable podcast guests. Each retreat is unique, leaving you energized with a set of simple tools to take control of your health and happiness sustainably. And the best part, you will be surrounded by like-minded individuals, ending the retreat with a personal action plan shared regularly within the group.
One of the things that I have learned since I've really done like a deep dive into the gut bacteria, and for your listeners, a lot of them probably know this, but you have about 37 trillion bacteria just in your gut,
Yeah.
your large colon. You have about 100 trillion on your whole body. So when you look at your skin, your mouth, your eyes, your nose, and so forth, you have about 100 trillion bacteria. We have about 20,000 genes. There's over 1 trillion bacterial genes that we have in our ecosystem.
Amazing.
So well over 99% of all the genes in this ecosystem of our, because we have about 37 trillion cells in our body. We have 37 trillion bacteria just in our gut, and we have 100 trillion on our whole body. So they control a lot of our, mentation, for instance. These gut bacteria secrete about 90% of our serotonin, which is our happy hormone, about 50% of our dopamine. They actually control a lot of our metabolism through GLP-1. I don't know, is semaglutide popular in Spain? The weight loss, Wegovy, Ozempic.
Yeah, oh, yes. At least now we've been hearing a lot of Ozempic, which is quite scary because people are getting injections to reduce their hunger, and they think that that's the greatest invention there is because they stop eating and they're losing weight. So they think that that's the big miracle. So Ozempic is definitely something that I see it very, very critically. So how is your opinion on that?
Well, what's interesting is that Ozempic is basically a GLP, glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist. What's interesting is when you eat plant-based, the bacteria feed on the fiber and they release these short-chain fatty acids, which then send a signal to the colon cells to release GLP-1.
Okay.
It actually works like semaglutide just by eating more whole food plant-based.
Yeah.
It also causes the colon cells to release hormone called PYY and then leptin, which affect your appetite and your metabolism. They kind of slow gastric emptying, and they also make you more insulin sensitive. So it reduces your chances of getting type 2 diabetes. But I personally use a sublingual semaglutide for people that are like massively overweight. Just like do it for like 3 to 6 months. Just to get them going in the right direction. Because I always kind of look at the risk-benefit ratio. When somebody's obese, their chances of getting just about every type of chronic disease, including cancer, goes way, way up. So it's all about risk-reward benefit. So I use it. There's a sublingual way that you can administer it. It does help people kind of get going in the right direction. But I do very intense coaching. I literally text these people every day.
Yeah.
I'll text them like if I see a little article or I see a little post, and then they have to send me a food journal every week. So I analyze those, and if they're getting off track, trust me, they know because I get up their butt. So it's just not you give people semaglutide. You really got to coach them because you don't want them on that forever.
Yeah.
I tell them 3 to 6 months is it. And if you don't send me your food journal, you're not getting a refill. Yeah. So, but I do think there's a place for it. But I think too many of these clinics and so forth, it's just a money-making proposition where they, put these people on these injections that they literally tell them you're going to have to be on this for the rest of your life, which is not the way it should be utilized.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good message because some people in my near proximity are using it and actually for a very long time now, almost a year, and they're increasing the doses. So therefore, I was a little bit scared because of the side effects that it could have if you take it in a longer period of time in the higher doses. So thanks again for explaining on that. And it's very interesting also because I realized that when I was eating plant-based foods, exactly your experience. If I look at my life before plant-based and after plant-based, I'm eating today so much more tasty food, and it's just so diversified the way how we eat now compared to how I was eating before, because it was either rice or potatoes and mixed either combined with chicken or turkey or beef. So that was just a combo, maybe one string of a bean or something on the side. And,
exactly.
And then afterwards I just felt like bloated, or sometimes I was very full. I had brain fog. I couldn't focus at work after lunch, and all of that just disappeared after it became plant-based, and I've always a sharp focus. I never felt bad after eating. So that's, I think, the other benefit that people will realize that, hey, actually, it's not normal to feel bad after eating. And they think that that's actually normal, that you have to like be half alive after a lunch or after a dinner, and they cannot.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
that is definitely something that it was for me an eye opener to see that I do not have to suffer after every meal, and that became for me a new standard. So that's where I couldn't look back anymore. And just like in your case, Dr. Michael Greger was also the person who convinced me, because I'm a very data and fact oriented kind of person. And when I saw all that information that he had on the website and all the presentations he gave, I said, okay, that definitely makes sense. And that was for me also the switch where I went from heavy everything what I was eating. I was just eating lots of meat and lots of dairy, and that really changed everything in my life as well. I had no more cholesterol issues. I had no more high blood pressure. I had no more reflux. I was able to sleep better. I had no more allergies. So everything just disappeared. And therefore, I'm so grateful for everybody who is promoting this. One of the things that I do have to say, though, that some people, when they switch to plant-based, or they say a lot, of course, the vegan diet, today, of course, it's easier than it was maybe 10, 20 years ago. But as it's so easy, a lot of people fall into the trap of buying all that processed type of vegan food, like the processed sausages, processed chicken breast that is vegan, and all of that food. And then they say, well, it didn't work for me. I'm just as unhealthy. And I say, yeah, because you're still eating all that processed stuff. Yeah, you really have to try to eat things that don't come with a barcode.
Well, I don't even like to use the word vegan, to be quite. The only time I really use it when I'm at a restaurant, just so they, it's the easiest way to kind of convey you don't want any, meat or dairy. But there's a really good book that Dr. McDougall wrote called The Starch Solution, and he actually has a chapter in there called The Fat Vegan. I think sometimes when people are eating vegan for political or climate change reasons or animal rights or whatever, I think a lot of them are really like super unhealthy. I mean, that can be one of the unhealthiest diets that you can eat. Yeah. I mean, if you're eating potato chips and Coke all day, you are vegan.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are not healthy. In fact, I really think when you even go plant-based, it's not a bad idea to get your blood markers, your biomarkers checked. Like on my website, I have a 70-plus biomarker quest test that I do. And I will tell you, I've never had anyone have all of those biomarkers normal, even people that eat whole food plant-based. I know myself, when I first started eating, my iodine level was low. Like, people don't realize if you're not eating seafood, your iodine level can get low, and that can affect your thyroid function. Then you feel tired, and then you think it's because you're vegan. That kind of person, it's not a bad idea to get some of those biomarkers checked, because they can get out of whack. I've never had a patient have a normal molybdenum level. Chromium levels are usually really low, cobalt. And I think one of the reasons is the way we kind of cultivate the soil nowadays. I think they're depleted, even organic food. I think a lot of times it's mineral deficient. So when I get those results back, I'll make recommendations for, supplementation. But I've had people that were eating whole food plant-based that weren't even taking a B12 supplement. It was like, so you have to be educated when you do it. Yeah. And I think people think you can just, whatever diet is, you really need to be educated on what you might be deficient in and so forth. So, but that's just a kind of a word of caution for some people that are eating whole food plant-based. It's not a bad idea to get get your mineral levels checked. Especially, I would say that's one area. I also recommend a omega-3 fatty acid supplement for all vegans, because I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Joel Fuhrman, but he noticed, even in his practice, he's like about 70 years old at this point, that a lot of the people that were vegans, as they were getting older, they were really suffering with Alzheimer's, dementia, and so forth. So you really need that DHA. Yeah. And it tends to be low in people that are vegan. So I really recommend, either an algae or fish. I personally take a fish oil supplement. Mm-hmm. I know some vegans, when I say that, they start freaking out. But I personally think a fish oil supplement's a little better than an algae supplement, because it has higher levels of EPA. Most algae supplements, if you look at them, they're kind of low in the EPA. They're higher in the DHA. They're the two omega-3 fatty acids in there. So I personally have like 12 supplements on my website, but I have one that has about 1,000 milligrams each capsule of it's fish oil. So all the vegans out there, don't be like freaking out on me here. So in fact, I even tell some of my patients, even if you want to have an occasional piece of fish like salmon or something, I really don't have a problem with that. Joel Furman did a kind of an analysis of the scientific literature, and he felt as long as you keep your meat content to about 5% or less, you can reverse disease. Once you start getting above that, and if you look at the blue zones, which I'm sure you're familiar with, for your audience that don't know, it's Icaria, Greece, Sardinia, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Okinawa, and then Loma Linda, which is the United States. In fact, what's interesting in Loma Linda, the average woman who follows a whole food plant-based diet, and they're 7-day Adventists, so a lot of them are vegans or vegetarians due to religious purposes. The average woman lives about 10 years longer than their American counterpart. Wow. And men live about 14 years longer. So it definitely has a positive effect on lifespan. But if you look at the blue zones, they eat about 90 to 95% plant-based. It's not like they're 100% plant-based, but they might have like a piece of fish a couple times a week, about the size of your fist. It's not like a huge, United States, it's like, okay, you got this big piece of steak and there's like a little, like you said, a string bean on the side, where, the plant foods kind of dominate their diet. And Okinawa, about 69% of their diet is this purple sweet potato. So it's kind of interesting. In Okinawa, breast cancer is almost unheard of in that area. So, but I really think if somebody wants to incorporate a little bit of meat, I don't really see that to be a problem, as long as it's grass-fed. And I personally think fish is probably one of your better options compared to the other, like chicken and red meat, pork, and so forth.
Okay, very good. And what my wife she just bought the other day, sea moss, because she said that her iodine was a bit low. So sea moss is supposed to help her with iodine. Is that also the right direction to go if we would blend it, let's say, into our smoothie?
Yeah. Sea moss, you can get kelp. I mean, I personally use nascent iodine drops.
Okay.
You can get them on Amazon. Do you guys have Amazon over there?
Yes, we do.
We do. Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Holy hell. So, but it's called nascent iodine. I put like 5 drops in my drinking water. My wife uses, when she salts, we don't use a lot of salt, but if she does, it's an iodized salt.
Okay.
So, that way, that's a way of getting
perfect
iodine into your system if you're whole food plant-based, because that is one area where you could definitely be deficient.
Yeah.
And that could affect your metabolism, because then your thyroid isn't functioning at maximum level.
Okay, very good to know. And you did mention a bit earlier about the beans that are also part of the daily dozen. Do you soak your beans overnight for, I don't know, 10, 12 hours? Sure. Yeah. Okay, because that we've also, that's like our ritual.
Yeah, if you buy them canned, I mean, obviously, but you have to be careful. A lot of times there's a lot of sodium in those. But beans are an amazing anti-cancer food. In fact, I did a post on Instagram. It was probably about 2 months ago, where cancer cells, as they are metastasizing, they actually release these chemicals. They're called metalloproteinases, matrix metalloproteinases, and they one of them is called collagenase, for example. That'll kind of give you a visual what it does. So it breaks down a lot of the extracellular tissue so that it can spread. And what they did is they looked at 9 different beans, because it's been shown that beans actually have a inhibitory effect on these MMPs. So they looked at 9 different ones, and do they eat lupini beans in Spain? Because they're popular in Italy.
Yeah, we do have them, but they do not eat it that often.
Okay, well, I'm Italian. My grandparents actually came over from Italy, but we always ate lupini beans. But it was interesting, lupini beans had the most potent anti-MMP effect. Garbanzo beans were next, and then soybeans. Yeah, they were the 3 most potent. So, for instance, when I eat a salad every day, I always put lupini beans on my salad. Okay. It's kind of an interesting, when you really look at the blue zones, beans are really one of the staples of just about every one of those countries. Yeah. And when you look at the longest lived countries in the world, beans are always one of the main staples. So it really is like a longevity food.
Would you, for people who want to speed it up in the kitchen and they have the beans overnight, is it also okay to use the pressure cooker to get the beans cooked much quicker?
Oh, yeah. My wife uses an Instapot.
Okay.
For just about everything.
Oh, very good.
That's what she uses. Yeah. But you definitely don't want to eat a bean like when it's hard,
Oh yeah.
because there's a lot of lectins in there that really could cause some issues. So
Yeah.
when you soak overnight and then you cook it, you break down a lot of the lectins.
Okay.
But lectins aren't totally bad. Like,
Yeah.
everybody kind of gets down on phytates and lectins and beans and so forth. But in my book, I actually go through the scientific literature on phytates. I mean, they are some of the most potent anti-cancer foods on the planet.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe it's one of the Asian countries. They actually use a phytate scan instead of a PET scan to identify cancer. So when you get cancer, they do what's called a PET scan. They give you radioactive sugar. And then, as most people know, cancer really needs a lot of sugar. I mean, cancer cells have about 3 to 10 times more insulin receptors compared to like a normal cell. So they really eat up a lot of sugar. So it lights up on the X-ray. Where in one of the Asian countries, they actually use a phytate scan. So these phytates actually they give you radioactive phytates, and they actually light up where the cancer is. So, but they have anti-cancer effects just about, when you go through the scientific literature, just about against every type of cancer. So beans are something that I strongly recommend, and Dr. Greger, maybe that's why he has 3 servings of legumes in there. So
and
but you know what? When you think about it, though, you could eat like hummus, so that would be a serving. Like I'm putting lupini beans on there.
That's right.
And so it's something that you can do, but for me, it's a little hard to get the 3. So.
Yeah. And that's why I came back to the topic of the beans, because a lot of people who ask me about what I eat, and when I say the word beans, they're like, oh, but that's giving me too much gases. And I'm like, no, but you have to prepare it in a certain way. You have to keep them overnight. Then you have to cook them properly. Then you're not going to have the gases that you fear about. So I think that's usually like a misconception that people think that, they'll be the whole day with a bloated belly if they eat beans.
Well, your gut microbiome has to adjust too. When I don't know if you went cold turkey, but I did.
I did too.
I think when you go like cold turkey, I think, the gas and all that can be a little bit to deal with. But when you do it gradually, your gut microbiome adjusts, and it really isn't an issue at all. Like I said, my wife and I eat at least 60 to 70 grams of fiber per day, and we just don't find that to be an issue.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. I had also to go through that adjustment phase, because I also went from one day to the next plant-based, and my wife did it at the same time as I did. So we really had to take turns going to the bathroom, because we were just running in and out, the two of us. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, I have one patient that I'm coaching that is going plant-based, and he's severely overweight. And it was like meat every meal. But that's what he told me. He goes, I haven't had bowel movements like this like for years, So so it's been a good thing for him.
Very good to hear, and also for those who are starting that journey, that they know that this is not going to be a constant, that this is just going through that phase. And then once your gut and everything gets adjusted to it, then you start normalizing again. And the good thing is that as a plant-based person, you do have this super easy bowel movements every single day, because anybody who would ask, they would like, what, every day? For them, it's like awkward that you would have bowel movements every day. So that's I think also something that a lot of people don't really know. What is then the healthy thing? So what is your opinion, Dr. Brandy, on how often should a bowel movement be? Is it once a day or?
Oh, I mean, you should at least. I mean, I don't want to gross everybody, but I have like 3 bowel movements a day, and I think that is normal. I think a lot of Americans, I have some patients that would move their bowels once a week, and that is definitely abnormal. I mean, you have a lot of toxicity building up in the bowel. So, and what most people don't realize is 60% of your stool is actually bacteria.
Wow.
So when you are eating whole food plant-based, I mean, you'll have larger stools also, just because you have this proliferation of these healthy bacteria in your large colon. So in America, we just eat so little fiber. If you look at some of there's one last hunter-gathering tribe in the world. They're called the Hazzas. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're in Tanzania. Yeah. And they eat about 160 grams of fiber per day. Like when people talk about these Paleolithic diets, they talk about the hunter-gatherer. Well, we have a hunter-gatherer tribe in the world. So just look at what they eat. Yeah. And they eat about 600 different species of plant foods per year. The average American eats about 50 different plant foods per year. And they eat some meat, but it's not a big part of their diet. It's, because it's a big deal to have to go out and hunt like an animal and so forth. So they're basically hunter-gatherers, but it's primarily a plant-based diet that
Yep.
they eat. So it's interesting. So when the people talk about this Paleolithic diet and it's like primarily meat, I'm thinking, I don't know, man. Look at the Hazzas.
Yeah.
We have a hunter-gatherer tribe in the world, so just analyze what they're doing, and that's pretty much what they did back thousands of years ago.
Absolutely. Wow, that's a good insight. And if I look now at the list of the Anti-Cancerize yourself, we already covered many of these topics here. I just have a question about where you lower your omega and the fats. Do you also refer to the fats from avocado and nuts, or do you mean then the other fats, like the bad fats that you consume?
It's mainly saturated fat
Yeah.
that I try to keep low.
Yeah.
I personally eat about 11 different nuts every day. If you look at the scientific literature, people that eat about a handful of nuts every day have much lower all-cause mortality. People think I'm a fanatic, but before I take my supplements, you always should take some kind of fat before you take supplements, or your fat-soluble vitamins won't be absorbed. But same thing with a salad. That's why I always put a really high-quality extra virgin olive oil on there, because if you don't, your carotenoids and so forth that are fat-soluble will not get absorbed. In fact, when I'm done here, I do time-restricted eating too, which is something that really does help cancer. There have been studies that have shown, in fact, the original study I actually have in my book. It was where they took breast cancer patients that were in remission, and they time-restricted one group. They didn't eat for 13 hours. So they would eat their food like within a 9-hour window.
Yeah.
The group that did the 13-hour, fasting, their relapse rate decreased by about 36%. The group that fasted less than 13 hours, their mortality rate was 36% higher than the group that was fasting. So I recommend my patients to do, they can eat all their food in an 8-hour window. So when I'm done here, I'm going to get my nuts. I know this sounds weird, but I do like 2 almonds, 2 walnuts, 2 pecans, a couple hazelnuts. I grab some sunflower seeds, some pumpkin seeds. So there's like 11 different ones that I take. And then after that, there's like a tea that I developed. It's actually on my website. And they're the 5 teas that I actually have on my book. I actually put them into one area. Then I take my supplements with the tea.
Yeah.
And once again, you really need to make sure that you're ingesting some kind of fat.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I ingest are obviously the fish oil that I talked about before. For instance, turmeric is one of the supplements. And supplements are one of the 5 in the Anti-Cancerize. Targeted supplements are extremely important when you're battling cancer. So turmeric is probably one of the most important ones. And I always tell people, if you're not taking some fat with turmeric, it's not getting absorbed. So I always recommend taking fish oil with the turmeric and then adding some like a black pepper extract, bioperine, with it. Because studies show that black pepper extract actually increases the absorption of curcumin by almost 2,000%. So, but just a little insight on the nuts. So.
Wow. And do you also soak them?
I'm nuts for nuts.
Yeah, you're nuts for nuts. Yeah. Yeah. I also tell my wife, you're getting me nuts. Yeah, with all these different nuts that she's buying, but it's really so good for your health. I really could feel the difference when I was training, either if it's cardio training or resistance training, that I definitely have much more strength. And I don't get hungry that often, because before I used to eat, I would say, a lot of fruits at the beginning of the day. But then I just realized that I got so hungry so quickly, like already every single hour I had to eat some more fruit. But as soon as I started then ingesting more nuts, then I started feeling more calm, felt that I had more energy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think nuts are like really super, super important. The only thing you have to caution on is you don't want to be sitting in front of the television, like just eat a bunch of nuts. Like you really have to minimize the amount. Maybe put it on your salads or do it the way that I'm doing. I do it like as almost like a medicine. Yeah. So, but you don't want to be sitting in front of the TV with a big bowl of nuts, and before you know
it's all gone.
Like you ate over 1,000 calories, so you don't want to be doing that.
That's right. Sure. And is it necessary to soak the nuts like they do it with the beans as well, or?
Not really. Okay. I would say the only 2 that really are not nuts that I would make sure they're roasted because they're legumes are peanuts and cashews. Okay. So like the other ones I get raw, like I'll eat, raw almonds, raw pecans, raw walnuts and so forth. But for peanuts and cashews, because they're technically not nuts, they're legumes. And you got to be concerned with the lectins. I usually get those roasted.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I know that some people say that they're also a little bit concerned that sometimes with peanuts you have to watch out with molds, that sometimes if the way how they're stored and when they're traveling, that they could sometimes store some mold.
Yeah, it's the
Oh,
aflatoxin
okay.
in the peanut. But to be quite honest with you, I don't really, unless you're eating like a huge bag of them, but I basically just take a little handful of them. Like it's not even a handful. It's
Yeah.
just, there's probably like 10 peanuts in
Yeah.
there. But you have to remember, peanuts are very helpful. In fact, there's a study that I posted on one of my sites, and it was done in Cornell, and they looked at the 10 most common nuts and their anti-cancer effect against liver cancer. They basically applied, extracts to these liver cancer cells that were growing in a petri dish. And what they found was that walnuts and pecans were the most potent.
Okay.
And then after that, it was peanuts.
Wow.
So, peanuts have a lot of resveratrol. So, so you always have to look at the risk-benefit ratio of whatever you're intaking. So I don't really worry about those aflatoxins. I really don't, unless you're eating like bags and bags of it every day. I think if you're just doing a small amount, it's not really a big deal.
Exactly. Perfect. Thanks for that. And I think it's always doing the right dosage of things. Yeah, like sunshine is also very healthy for a person, but a lot of people overdo it. And then, of course, comes that craze of, you got to put sunscreen because it's so dangerous. But of course, it's dangerous if you're going to be 2 hours in the summertime under the sun getting a sunburn. Then, of course, if you do that too often, it's going to be very risky. But if you do keep it within range and you say, okay, I'll do 20 minutes maybe, and that you really know what is the right dosage. And the same thing with the food, with the nuts, to watch out. You don't eat too many of those, but in the small doses, it's very good. And therefore now my next question also for you, the exercise, and you also have the roundabout 30 minutes exercise per day, and which will also include the 10,000 steps per day. The exercise, does it matter if it's aerobic or anaerobic, or how would you define the exercise?
Well, what I recommend, and just kind of give you, an idea of how potent exercise is. I mean, there have been many studies show that exercise will decrease your chances of getting many cancers, anywhere from 10 to 30% reduction. But there was a good breast cancer study that was done, and they looked at women that were in remission. One group, all they did was brisk walking 30 minutes per day, and they lowered their relapse rate compared to the control group by 24%. Then another group kind of jogged 2/3 of a mile every day. They reduced their chance of relapse by 40%. And then the last group, they ran 2.3 miles per day. And they reduced their chance of relapse by 95%, which is, I don't think a drug could do that, to be quite frank. So exercise has an amazing effect on your immunity. In my book, there's one study that I talk about where even 6 minutes of exercise, any kind of exercise, increases your natural killer cell activity, which are the cells that kill cancer cells, by 50%. So you don't even need to do a large routine. In fact, I have a little band routine that I do every day. It takes me about 10, 15 minutes to get through. I made a video of it. I send it to all my patients. I just tell them, hey, listen, do something every day. Even 6 minutes is going to help your immune system. So as far as aerobic versus anaerobic and so forth, I'll just tell you what I personally do. I ride a bike every day. I might miss a day here and there, but I do that every day. So that's kind of like my aerobic. Right now I'm in Miami Beach, so every morning I walk on the beach. So I already did that this morning, which is fantastic. But I do strongly recommend people to do some kind of resistance exercise at least 3 to 4 times per week. Because what happens when you hit about 30, you lose about 0.5% of your muscle mass for every year over 30 if you're not doing some kind of resistance training. And what people don't realize, and so that means like in a decade, you lose about 5% of your muscle mass. I mean, like just kind of calculate that by the time you get to be 80. So what people don't realize is as you lose muscle mass, you become insulin insensitive. So you tend to get like a pre-type 2 diabetes. And when you have cancer, you definitely want to be sensitive to insulin. Because number one, you want to make sure that glucose gets into your cell, and you don't want it in the bloodstream because, as I said before, cancer really thrives on glucose. It needs a ton of glucose just to survive. Secondly, what a lot of people don't realize is when your insulin jacks up, so if you're insulin resistant, your insulin levels are going to be higher too. And insulin is a very potent cancer growth factor. People don't realize that it, when your insulin levels are high, cancer thrives on that. In fact, when they do studies, in laboratories and they want to get the cancer cells growing at a rapid rate, what do you think they put on it? They put insulin on it because it promotes cancer growth. So being, insulin sensitive is very, very important. And being plant-based is the best way to be insulin sensitive.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done studies where they show that when you put people on a plant-based diet, the fat that tends to accumulate inside of the muscle and the liver tissue tends to decrease when you start getting away from a lot of animal products. And it's really that saturated fat accumulation in the muscle and the liver that really causes the GLUT4 receptors to get mucked up, so that it really can't lock in to the insulin and let that glucose into the cells. So, but they've done studies with, MRI spectroscopy where they've actually shown that after eating whole food plant-based, that saturated fat actually leaves the muscle and the liver and allows those glucose receptors, those insulin receptors, to work more effectively.
Yes. Fabulous. Wow. That's a very good summary to motivate a lot of the listeners to really start getting out there and do some movement. And especially if you have something that's measurable, where they can say, around about 10,000 steps, that's doable. And 30 minutes a day, that's also, I would say, if you think about all the hours we have available when we are awake, 30 minutes, I could just plan it into my schedule. And I think it's very important that it's a set time of the day. So that's helped me at least quite a lot to say, okay, this is a time I'll just block on my calendar so that nobody can book anything there. There's not going to be a meeting that's going to happen exactly at that time because I already have that time booked. And that's my exercise time. That's the me time. And that's something that I think a lot of people should do, because they always say, oh, something came up or this came up. I had a meeting, I had a phone call. Say, because you didn't block the time for your training, which is important for you.
Well, you want to tell patients too is don't go to the gym. Because do it at home.
Yeah.
Like my little band routine, that's about 15 minutes to get through that.
Yeah.
You can do that every day, before the day starts. So that way things don't get kind of, like you said, meetings come up or there's unexpected events that occur. But I even write this in my book in the chapter on exercise, is that I recommend that you really do your exercise at home, because to do it at a gym, there are so many roadblocks that are going to pop up. Maybe the weather's bad. You got to drive like a half an hour. Then you get there. Then you run into someone. Then you have to chat with them. Then you got to drive home. So what you could have done in 15 minutes, it took 2 hours. So when you don't feel like doing it, you're not going to do it if you think, oh man, I got to do this, I got to do that, I'm going to run into something. You're just not going to be consistent with it. So I always encourage people to really try to get into a routine at home. Maybe have some bands that you can use, maybe some equipment at home where you don't have to go to a gym.
Fantastic, especially in the topic that we discussed right at the beginning regarding sweating and getting in a sauna. It's so fantastic that nowadays you have those small saunas that you can buy for home, that you can just fold it up and you just put it somewhere on the corner behind the door. And when you want to then start sweating at the end of the day, you just blow it back up. It gets back like a little tent.
Well, that's what we have. In fact, it's right in front of me. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
So we actually, right now I'm in my Florida home, but I also have a Pittsburgh home, but we have one in each place. But we have a little lake house outside of Pittsburgh, and we just basically fold it up. It kind of folds up into like a little suitcase type thing, and we take it there and we just open it up, set it up, and it's amazing. Yeah. The thing I like about those is your head is sticking out. And I personally don't like getting into a sauna where, your head, the whole, you can't really hardly breathe in there, where the way that we do it, your head is sticking out, and there's even a little place for your hands, like if you want to look at a cell phone or something while you're there. But we actually watch TV while we're in there, so we find it to be really pleasant. One thing I would recommend people to do, though, make sure you take it like an electrolyte solution or something when you're sweating. Like I actually have a little supplement on my website. It's called Immunolite, where we actually put a little scoop of that in water. And then I also use some strawberry freeze-dried powder, which, by the way, freeze-dried powders, I do want to mention this before we end this podcast. I think they're one of the most potent anti-cancer supplements that you can take. In my book, I actually go through all the different freeze-dried powders that I put in my morning coffee. For instance, I'll just take strawberry freeze-dried powder. There was a study that was done in Asia where they took people that had early esophageal cancer. And esophageal cancer is the second most deadly cancer next to pancreatic cancer. So they put these people on a quarter cup of strawberry freeze-dried powder every day for 6 months. And before they started, they did photography with endoscopy. They put the endoscope down the esophagus. They took photos of the cancer And then 6 months later, they took photos of the same area. I mean, these photos are mind-blowing. Like 50% of them had complete elimination of the cancer just on the freeze-dried powder.
Wow.
So there's like 16 different freeze-dried powders that I would put in my coffee. So what I did, a lot of my patients were like, hey, man, I can't blink. Like, it takes 20 minutes to do all this. So I actually have, I put all 16 into one place. I actually have it on my website.
Yeah.
And I mainly did it for myself at the beginning, just for convenience. And then my patients like really appreciate it. So it's called the Oncology Support Formula.
Yeah.
So it's like all the freeze-dried powder, like blueberry powder, strawberry, black raspberry, acai, goji. It has just about every mangosteen. I mean, things you probably never heard. So they, just put a tablespoon it in their coffee. It has like a cacao taste to it, gives it like a hot chocolate taste. And then I always add a little bit of soy milk because I do think soy is probably one of the better plant milks. But freeze-dried powders have a very potent anti-cancer effect. In fact, if you look at, for instance, blueberry freeze-dried powder, 1 gram of freeze-dried blueberry powder is like eating 50 grams of blueberries.
Wow.
So you're getting like an intense concentration of these phytonutrients, which we know have very potent anti-cancer effect. So that's something I would really encourage, patients to, or people out there that have cancer, they're just trying to prevent it, to make sure you try to get, some freeze-dried powders into your system, on a daily basis, either in a smoothie or in your coffee.
Exactly. Outstanding. And as we are also coming to the end of our podcast, we also have one of the final pieces of the puzzle that you have for the Anti-Cancerize yourself, and that's about the topic sleep. Yeah, that you should get it somewhere, again, the right doses, 7 to 8 hours. I know if you sleep too little, most people know it's not good. But if you also sleep too much, that's also, I think, counterproductive. So I think that sweet spot, no, it's like between 7 and 8 hours. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. And one of the things I would strongly recommend people to do, have you ever heard of an Oura ring?
Yeah, I heard about it, but I have not tried it out yet.
I tell you what, it's amazing. It's a really good way to monitor your sleep.
Wow.
This thing is like incredible. Now, they're not cheap. You go to ouraring.com. It's a sleep tracker, essentially. And I know when I first started using it, like it really helped me pick up some things that, and they give you recommendations when they notice something. So like it tells you, and there's actually a graph that shows you what's happening throughout the night. So it shows you how much time you're in deep sleep, how much time you're in REM sleep, how much time you're in light sleep, when you're up. Like, I mean, it's really amazing. But one thing that really has blown my mind is if you're in bed for 8 hours, I mean, you've only slept probably about 6.5 hours. Like most people think if they're in bed for 8 hours, they had 8 hours of sleep. Like last night, I had like over an hour of REM and I had over an hour of deep. Wow. Then they give you a rating in the morning. Mine was optimal today. So like I'm on my game today. I feel like $1 million. But there's some days where, like I just didn't do well, and it'll say like pay attention, and it'll give you like, it'll go through all the different aspects of your sleep, and then it'll give you recommendations like, hey, you need to do this to improve that. Like one thing I was doing is I was taking my supplements too late. And I adjusted that. I started taking them a little bit earlier, and I noticed my sleep started getting better. But there are ways, if you go into my book, I go through all the different ways you can help your sleep, getting to bed, obviously. And Oura Ring gives you all these recommendations, like when you get the ring. But I think getting to sleep at the same time every day is like keeping on that diurnal rhythm. And I do think when you get up in the morning, getting light, like when I take that walk on the beach, and that light gets on my eyes first thing in the morning, that makes a huge difference in getting your diurnal rhythms in sync. The other thing for cancer patients that are out there, melatonin is one of the most potent anti-cancer hormones known to man. When you look at the research, even on people with stage 3, stage 4 cancer, I mean, their survival rates improved by about 40% on high dose. I'm talking about 180 milligrams per day. I mean, huge doses. So I recommend all my cancer patients to do at least 20 milligrams before they go to bed, like sublingually. But I think just for people that are having difficulty sleeping, I think doing like anywhere from a 1 to 3 milligram under your tongue. And then if you wake up in the middle of the night, like pop another one under your tongue. That'll help you get through the night. Plus you're getting some amazing anti-cancer and antioxidant activity from the melatonin. So melatonin is an amazing, in fact, we were talking about the gut microbiome. Your gut microbiome creates a ton of melatonin, and the mitochondria in all of your cells through light exposure actually create melatonin throughout the day. So melatonin it just isn't something that happens at night. In fact, you can take melatonin in the middle of the day and you won't get sleepy. Wow. Like it only make you sleepy when the light comes down. So when I have patients that have like a stage 4 cancer, I mean, I have them take melatonin like 4 times a day. And I have one patient has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he's doing like 60 milligrams 4 times a day. And he's doing amazingly well, as that being part of his treatment. So it does have some pretty amazing anti-cancer effects. But sleep, and that's when all your tumor surveillance is going on, when you're in deep sleep. That's when your body is really getting rid of a lot of the debris and so forth that has accumulated, like misfolded proteins and so forth. So it's really important to get that deep sleep. And the Oura Ring will tell you, how much deep sleep you're getting. Like the night before this one, I only had about like 10 minutes of deep sleep. And I could tell, I could just feel it that day that I just didn't get the deep sleep that I needed. So it's really interesting. But I would recommend a sleep tracker. And I do think Oura Ring is really one of the better ones. And I kind of use it as a wedding band too. So it's 2 birds with 1 stone. So.
Fantastic. Well, you definitely inspired me now to get one of those and test it, because I love measuring things. I love getting data and facts. And that's definitely one of those that's going to further boost the way how I'm going to optimize my sleep. So thanks for that recommendation.
Oh, yeah. Well, if your wife gets one too, like when you guys wake up in the morning, you'll go, hey, what was your score? It's kind of neat.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And when my wife says she had a bad score, I'm going, oh man, I got to get ready for this.
I better stay longer at the beach in my walk.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And the final piece now from the puzzle was regarding the stress. So we do get stress from the toxins. We get also stress from the type of food that we put into our bodies. But there's also the type of stress that goes through our mind. Yeah. So that type of stress, I think one could probably target with meditation. Is this also something that you would recommend?
Well, one of the things that I did initially is, and it was recommended to me by a friend who had gone through a cancer diagnosis, is to go to a psychologist. And it was a psychologist that kind of specialized in cancer. And when you get a cancer diagnosis, I mean, it's scary as hell. I mean, it really is, because, I mean, they call cancer the emperor of all maladies. And I think we've all seen people go through cancer treatments. I mean, it's really one of the scariest things to go through. So I would say getting advice from a psychologist. I went 3 times. That's all I really needed. She really helped me kind of, deal with the whole thing with getting your spiritual priorities in check and so forth, because we all know we're going to die. But, when it's right in front of your face, I mean, you got to really get your priorities straight. Yeah. And, you want to get your spiritual priorities, your emotional, your family. If there's any, like one thing I did, if there were some people that I maybe had a bad relationship with, I met with them for lunch. I kind of tried to get everything squared away that way. I do think that's important. But one of the things I really coach all of my cancer patients on is take it one day at a time. The thing that really causes stress and anxiety is when you start thinking out too far, like what's going to happen a month from now, 2 months from now. And I tell these patients, listen, wake up each day, try to live as healthy as you can. Do something fun every day, because when you're having fun, you cannot be stressed. They do not go together.
Yeah.
So like when I'm on that beach taking a walk, there's no way I could feel stress when I'm doing that. So I always say plan something fun with your spouse, or, maybe watch a program together, maybe go out to dinner, whatever, but plan like a fun activity every day. And just take it a day by day. And when you do that, your stress levels really go down. I really do think when people start looking out too far, I really think that's when the anxiety, starts happening. But I do think it's not a bad idea to find a psychologist that specializes in cancer patients, just to kind of help initially through that initial shock.
That's right.
I will tell you, I don't think anybody can know what it's like until you're there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
And one of the other things I do think all people should learn is how to do deep breathing when they get anxious, because I think that makes a huge difference.
Okay.
So you can't basically breathe in, hold it for, the way I do it is I take a real deep breath, I hold it for 7, then I blow out 7. Like I just count to 7, then I blow out for 7.
Okay.
But when you do that, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and that really will calm you down. I think that little exercise is something that really can make a huge difference when you're under a stressful situation, or you're just feeling stressed out. If you just can learn how to do that, I do think that helps tremendously.
Yeah, fantastic. Wow, we sure covered a lot of topics in this compressed, a little bit over 60 minutes. And I'm sure that whoever's listening to this probably have to listen it that second time and take a couple of notes, because there's so much information. And I learned myself a lot here. So thank you so much, Dr.
Awesome.
Brandy. And this
It was blessed. Enjoyed
it was really great. And I think, a lot of people can really start thinking, how am I going to now make the next step in changing the habits that we have today? Because a lot of the things are just, we're just living today and we're living tomorrow. Almost, we're just doing the replica of what we did yesterday, because we're just on autopilot the whole day. And we have to really start thinking, how can I get out of that autopilot and start questioning every single thing that I'm doing, and if it's something good for me or it's something that's not good for me. And I think through this episode today, they will really identify many, many topics that they can ask, then hopefully better questions to get better answers. And also when they look into your website, it's so packed with information, from products to advice to even I've seen you have listed the different documentaries they could look at, like Forks Over Knives and other documentaries. So all of that is a nice summary of all of that information that's out there, that's to the disposal of everybody to be able to prevent getting ill, or if you do have cancer, then to see how you can speed up your recovery. And that's why I'm so grateful for your work, Dr. Brandy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just so your audience knows, my website is naturalinsightsintocancer.com.
Excellent.
And I do virtual consultation and 24/7 coaching virtually. So if they want to sign up for 1 or 2 hour virtual consultation, if you're struggling with cancer, or if you just need weight loss, I do coaching for that too. But I have a special 24/7 access to me through texting, email, and phone call, where you can 2 a.m. if you saw an article about a supplement, you want me to analyze it, or you want me to look at your lab work. I'm there 24/7. So people really do appreciate it. And you really need to have that kind of relationship if you're going to coach someone that's going through either, cancer treatments, or they're just trying to, get their weight so that they're not going to be predisposed to cancer.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of today. Many people say that technology is not good. Yeah, it's bad for you. But in other cases, if you use technology the right way, then it can really benefit everyone by making the right connections with the right people. And that's why, again, in this case, I find it fantastic.
It's amazing. Hey, you're in Spain right now, and I'm in Miami.
Yeah, so it's exactly.
We wouldn't be able to do this right now.
That's
so
right.
It's amazing.
And then when I think about the listeners that I have, they're also from so many different countries. They're from Australia, from the US, from South America, and so forth, and they then can be potentially contacting you, where you're living in Florida. So it's just a nice global community.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do consults on patients from all over the world. You could, but once again, it's technology. It's amazing, and it's like we're talking right now. I'm talking to them.
That's right.
And we can keep texting, emailing, calling, FaceTiming, whatever. It's amazing.
So true. And I think it's probably very similar to money. So if you have money, you could do really bad things with it, or you could do magnificent things with money.
Exactly.
So same with technology.
Exactly.
You could really brainwash yourself by looking at TikTok all day, or you could use technology to your advantage and connect with people, fantastic people around.
Exactly. Good point. Awesome point. Yeah.
Great, Dr. Brandy. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you here on this podcast episode, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, do so. If you ever want to do it again, let me know.
Definitely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Okay, bye now.
What an incredible conversation with Dr. Brandy. Here are the key highlights from our talk. Point number 1, a whole food plant-based diet can play a significant role in preventing and treating cancer. Point number 2, detoxification and eliminating toxins from our environment are crucial for overall health. Point number 3, supplementation and regular testing can help address nutrient deficiencies and ensure optimal health. Learning nugget number 4, exercise, including aerobic and resistance training, is important for overall health and can reduce the risk of cancer. Point number 5, getting sufficient sleep, around 7 to 8 hours per night, is crucial for overall health and well-being. And point number 6, managing stress and anxiety through techniques like deep breathing and seeking support from a psychologist can improve mental and emotional health. Don't forget to check the show notes for links and details on where to find Dominic. And now, I'm curious, which part of this episode resonated the most with you? I value your feedback and I would love to hear from you. Please take a moment to rate, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone who could benefit from this content. Your support means the world to me and it motivates me to keep creating content that adds value to your life. Looking forward to connecting with you in the next episode. Big hugs, everyone!